Alright, welcome back to another Rewrite My Web App video. We are rewriting Mike's family construction business website. We've done a pretty good job porting this over to React. And now we got to look at some more complicated stuff. So we're going to focus on this photo gallery in the next few parts here. There's a lot going on here to make this production ready, and in this particular series I'm not going to cover all of them because they're, to optimize this, what we'd really want to do is we'd really want to give an admin the ability to upload and categorize these. When Mike sent this in, he asked me if I could demonstrate how to make the clickable categories, so that's what we're going to focus on for this particular set of videos, and I would challenge Mike and anyone else to extend it and extend what we're going to write as far as the data piece goes to some sort of Mongo database or something like that, and add an admin side to allow people to modify or add to the data structure we'll create. But for now, we'll just focus on the front end bit, and then maybe if somebody else sends in a project, we can focus on the back end bit, because I don't want anyone to get too bored. Anyway. So what does this photo gallery do? It's basically just pictures, and you can't actually click one or do anything with it yet. So what I think would make sense is, again, Mike asked for categories, so we'll do that. And then if you clicked one and it had a full screen pop-up of one, that would be good. So we got to do this in a bunch of parts. Let's first focus on how do we get the data going for this. So let's go into our project. For the most part, we've been working in the client folder as we've been doing these videos, but we're going to switch gears a little bit and move into the API layer. It's a good idea, even in your front-end projects, to have an API layer that will then interact with any sort of backend that you have. For a number of different reasons. Clean code is one of them. It's just cleaner to have your API layer do some data work, any transformation you need, that sort of thing. But also for security purposes, if you're ever handling sensitive information, it just puts another layer between any potential intruder and that information. So that's what we're going to do. This API service is written in it's written in Node. So let's see. Looks like they're listening on the port, blah, blah, blah. That's great. I'm not really sure where this is coming from. What is this? API example? Oh, okay. So what they have in the setup is they have just a set of example endpoints. Just a quick primer if you're setting this stuff up. This is like the piece that's passed through to this function from here. And then .get means whenever time anybody sends a GET request to this endpoint, we're going to do this stuff. So what we want to do is we want to set this up. They have obviously a bunch of stuff, but we're not going to use all this. We'll keep it here, but we'll set up our own. We want to set up an endpoint for images. So let's go ahead and let's make a new file in this API folder. We'll call it. I can't save anything. Why can't I save anything? Oh, duh. Okay. We'll call it images.js. And essentially we want to just copy this. We'll copy what was in here, but we're not going to use all of it. In fact, we're going to use basically none of it. We'll keep one endpoint here. We don't want users, but we want ID count. So how would this work? Theoretically, what this would do is when any time somebody said API get /images, we would want to return some set of images. Maybe all of them, maybe some, who knows. But we're going to return them. So that's thing number one. Now when we're thinking about this, we're going to have categories. So what you want to think about is, alright, is when you click on one of these categories, is that going to go and request different data? Or is it just going to filter the data that we already have? Because we're just going to be dealing with basically strings that are file paths and I guess categories, we're going to want to return the entire data set. These categories are not going to need to go and get new data. You'd only do that if the data you're physically working with is cumbersome to store on the front end, which is generally not the case, but I don't want to tell you that because it might not be true. Additionally, we're only working with what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows of 4 points each, so not that many entries. If we were expecting, many thousands of entries, we would also filter by like offset and page in here. But as it stands, I think what this is going to do is return all the images. So we'll only need one endpoint. Generally speaking, you could have like if you wanted to like search for images based on something, and then just get one image. So a search for images would look like this, but one image would look like this. This is like saying the query parameter image is the ID of the image, but we're never going to actually need to get more information about one image on the API side, so we're just going to need to do this. And we're going to go ahead and it's going to say return some set of images, and we're going to return all of them. Alright, so what should we do next? We're not going to actually set up a database in Mongo or anything like that here, but we are going to set our program up to make it able to use one should one ever arise. So what we do in production at our company is we have another folder in our project set for like resources or data client, something like that, some sort of top-level directory that's specifically for interacting with all these web services. I'm going to call it resources for now. Where'd it go? Oh, but it's not supposed to go here. That's wrong. It's supposed to go here. Folder, resources. All right, and this resources file is also going to have images.js. All right, and then this is where all this job is to route the API call to images to this file, right? So this is where your application is routing its various API calls to where they need to go. This side of the application is what's responsible for interacting with your database, whether it's Mongo or whatever. So we're going to put our mock data in here because this is where it technically would come from. We don't have any mock data yet, but that's where it's going to go. And I mean, essentially, we're going to have an array of objects that are going to sort of look like this. So we can like make stuff up for now. So we'll say images is an array, and we'll just put like 2 objects in it for now. How about 3? We did 3. And I think the shape of this should basically be URL and category. Should we allow images to be more than one category? Sure. So we could specify that category could either be just a string or just an array of strings. Let's call it an array of strings. If it's just one, it's fine. So walls, right? And then this one would be site.com2, and this could be houses. And then finally, site.com3 category. You get the idea, right? Yeah. Yes, you do. Ooh, toilets. Johns. Poopy thrones. All right. Let's just say toilets. Okay, so we have 3 categories set up in our mock database, and that's great. All right, so what's this going to do? This is going to call that file. We first have to import it, so we'll import images from, let's see how we get there. We're going to go up 1 into the API folder, up 2, resources, images. And what we tend to do is we'll have something on the bottom that is an object. That'll export all the various methods here. So we're only going to have, I guess, one find method. Generally speaking, find is when you get multiple records. Get is when you get one record. So we're going to get multiple records. And then we'll say const find is a new promise. Resolve reject. I always have to double check my promise making syntax. Like for whatever reason, I can never remember exactly how to set it up. Did we do it? New oh no. New promise. We almost did it. There we go. Okay, cool. We don't need this. Okay, so find is a promise, and this area always needs to be promise-based because you're never going to be able to make your database calls synchronous. That's a terrible idea. So these are always promise-based. I'm using the arrow function syntax here. You don't have to. You can use standard one. Doesn't matter. But there we go. So this promise is normally it would, you know, make a call and return this stuff. So just to simulate, let's like put it on a delay. We'll say set timeout. The function is going to return it's going to use the resolve and then images, and then it wants to do this after, we'll say on a 3-second delay, just to simulate like a database call, 2-second delay. In case you don't know what this resolve thing does, this means like we're going to end the promise here. So the promise is now going to send back to where it came from. We're resolving it. We could also reject if there was an error. We'll resolve the promise here using this. And actually, whenever you're getting data, it's a good idea to decide in your company on a data structure. Like actually, what we do is we always send back like a status message. So like status looks like this. There's a code 200, message, okay. We'll usually send back a filter if there was a query filter. There wasn't. And then we'll say our data that we're returning looks like this. So that's kind of like one thing you can do to make your life a little bit easier. It's not really giving me good highlighting here, so I'm wondering if I messed up, but I don't know. I don't think I did. We'll find out. Anyway, so here's our find function that's simulating a database call using our mock data and returning it, resolving the promise once it's done. And that's find. So we're exporting just this. So over here, what we're going to do is we want to call images.find, which is a promise, and then here we're going to return the result. Is that how they did it? Let's see how they did their example. Their example uses return. So that's fine. Probably not the best way to do this as far as like getting a backend going. You probably want to use like an express middleware or something like that, but this is fine for now. So images.find, we're calling this, which is a promise. Then means when the promise is resolved, we're going to send back this structure into result, and then we're returning result. So I think this will work. We might have to return this to, not entirely sure. Oh, there's a chance. We'll find out. I don't know. This seems better to me, but I don't know what's right. So anyway, so when we go get images, we're going to do this. So yeah, that's the general setup for how you want to structure your API layer in your front end. This is only responsible for routing the requests from your various components into your various data points and resources. This is what's actually responsible for going and fetching the data and sending it back. If I were to be doing any transformation, this is probably where I'd be doing it. Like say I expected category to just be categories if there were multiple, I don't know. I'd transform it here. We don't want to transform any data in this layer. This is just for sending requests and returning them back. This is where we want to do application logic and stuff like that. Not 100% sure on the syntax as we're getting some funky coloration going on, but that's the idea. Just wanted to set it up. So what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to send this structure back from our front end. We'll be able to send the structure back to here. And then this has to be called from somewhere from our front end. The only thing left to do to set this side up, we'll do the client side in the next video. The only thing left to do here is if we go into our API file, you'll notice that example API is being called here. And API service I guess is shipping example API as an array in here. So what we probably want to do is import hours and then add it to this array. We're going to use the example and the images API. So that should be neat. What do we got? We got a thing. Return images. We don't need to actually return. I guess we'll return this. What do we got next? Oh, it worked. Cool. So this is all set up. And theoretically, if we were to call this endpoint, we could have some success. But we're not ready to do that yet because we don't have any page set up to handle this image collection. So that's what we're going to do in the next video. We'll set up a page to request the images and then render them. But what I'm going to do off screen is I'm actually going to upload these pictures to Cloudinary and actually build this data structure so it makes a little bit more sense. Right now, there's no URL. This is fake. This is fake. These might actually be categories, but who knows? I'm going to build this off screen. So when you come back to the next video and you see this more developed, that's what happened. But other than that, I won't touch it, and we'll see you next time. Until then, happy coding!